Hi, I'm Kit Kowalski. I recently did a short video explaining the costs of obtaining puberty blockers in Australia. Today, I'd like to talk now about the cost of taking exogenous estrogen for trans-identified males, or the high price of titty Skittles. I was inspired to look at this topic after reading a couple of articles about the high price of being transgender, such as this one from Crikey, The High Price of Being Who You Are by Joan Westenberg, and this one from the ABC, The Hidden $100,000 Price Tag on Being Transgender by Angela Lavoisier. I'll come back to those in a moment. So first I'd like to talk about the actual costs of buying the hormones. So to understand the medications that a trans-identified male would be taking, I went to two sources. Firstly, to TransHub. TransHub is ACON's portal for medical information for transgender. So it has quite a lot of medical detail on that side. From there, I was able to find out that trans-identified males would be taking estrogen, usually in the form estradiol pills, and would be looking at around 8 milligrams per day. They would also take an anti-androgen, such as spironolactone, and they didn't actually give the dose, but by confirming on the subreddit Transgender Australia, I was able to look in where people were reporting what medications they were taking, where they were getting them, how much they're taking, and how much they're paying for them. And so I was able to confirm that they're taking around between the 100 to 200 milligrams per day. So from there, what I did was I just looked up those medications in those doses. I put them into the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme website and had a look at the recommended prices. And then I just simply went into the Chemist Warehouse and I looked up the price there. So on this page, you can see I've got Proganova 2 milligram tablets, which is the name for estradiol. And you can see there are 4 prices there. The one we're interested in is the discounted PBS price. That's $10.50 for about a 14-day supply. So you might take slightly less or slightly more, but this is the recommended 8 milligram dose. So those 4 prices there are important. The discounted PBS price is what you're going to be paying if your doctor prescribes your medication for a purpose that's listed on the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme. If your doctor prescribes the medication, what we call off-label, then you'll be paying the private prescription price. In this case, it's actually the same. It's still $10.50. There's also a concession price down the bottom, and this is for people who are on an extremely low income. So you have to earn less than $500 a week to actually get this price. So if we put together estradiol and the anti-androgen, spiractin, we're looking at a cost of around $450 per annum for the titty Skittles. And I didn't make that up. Titty Skittles, breast mints, Fem&Ms. There's a whole raft of cutesy and slightly offensive names for them. So I thought, given that we started this discussion talking about the high price of being trans, I would compare this to other medications that people may be taking on a daily basis. So Zoloft is an antidepressant. If you take 100 milligrams of Zoloft a day, it's going to run up to about $140 per year. If you take 200 milligrams, it'll be a bit more, etc. So again, you might feel quite resentful about having to pay $140 a year, but it's still quite an affordable price for an essential medicine. If you have diabetes, on the other hand, This report from Diabetes Australia estimates that the average annual healthcare cost for a person with diabetes is $4,000 if there are no associated complications. So that's just going to the doctor, managing your condition, and just living your daily life. And you can be paying much, much, much more if you have a complicated diabetes. So it really puts that into perspective, that claim that there is a high cost to being trans. There is a very, very high cost to having diabetes in comparison, but we don't get the same kind of victim narrative coming out around diabetes. Now, just back to these articles that I started talking about. This one from Crikey by Joan Westenberg. He is a trans-identified male. The article starts out by saying, I begin my day with a breakfast of champions, estrogen pills, testosterone blockers, and black coffee. The first two are the basic routine for medically transitioning transgender women, but you would think they're anything from basic looking at the price. There's no special Medicare provisions for transgender access to either of them. Now, this is incredibly disingenuous. There's no special Medicare provisions for anyone to access these. You'll be paying the same price regardless of why your doctor is prescribing these for you. It's whether or not you're a woman who is going through menopause and is taking these medicines as a hormone replacement therapy, or if you're a trans-identified male and you want to grow breasts, you'll be paying the same amount of money. So the complaint is quite non-specific. It's very vague, and it doesn't need to be substantiated for that reason. So going on, the article sort of ends up on this odd note. For many, the lack of access to surgical and medical healthcare is an existential threat. So that's a fairly bold claim that is not evidenced in the article, and it's actually undercut by the next sentence. To be blunt, I can live quite happily as a woman who has a penis. So on the one hand, Westenberg is a male who claims that there are other males somewhere who need medical and surgical intervention, but he's not one of them. So we don't really know where this claim has come from. He's not substantiated it. He hasn't even called out to an anecdote to substantiate the claim. And then he goes on to bemoan the cost of medicines in general without talking about the actual costs. And he bemoans the cost of cosmetic surgeries, such as facial feminization. He doesn't actually mention genital surgery, and that's, I think, quite important. Okay, so on to the ABC article now, where Ange Lavoisier claims that being transgender comes with a hidden $100,000 price tag. So in the article, she talks about the case of Cassie Workman, who is a trans-identified male. He's a mid-career comedian and often works late nights doing stand-up comedy. You don't have to dig very far into the article to find out that Lavoisier believes that taxi fares are a cost of being transgender. So I think for most reasonable people would think that a taxi fare was a cost of working in the entertainment industry, working in service, food and beverage, entertainment in general. But no, for Lavoisier, it is a cost of being transgender that Cassie Workman has to pay because it is not safe for him to travel home in any other way after work. So again, we're talking about high costs. We're talking about someone who is supposedly unsafe and unable to make decisions about how they get home at night. So in other words, someone who's a victim. Although the article does concentrate on the story that they are struggling to make ends meet, they're still able to afford expensive surgeries. So, and they're saving up for a facial feminization surgery. So this is really important. This is all building a picture of a victim who needs your sympathy. So from Joan Westenberg's pronouncements that a genital surgery is a matter of life or death, to the claim that being trans requires a special late night transportation detail. It's all done in order to divert your attention from the fact that this is a cosmetic intervention. It's all done to divert your attention from the fact that these are males who want to grow breasts and they call estrogen titty Skittles because that's how they think about women's bodies. It's cosmetic, it's optional. And the way the journey is structured, it makes it seem perfectly acceptable to have titty Skittles, to have implants, to have facial feminization surgery, and a raft of other interventions before confronting the supposed source of all the dysphoria, which is the penis. So this victim narrative makes it seem perfectly acceptable that a man who claims he is in agony from being a man and must become a woman takes every step imaginable to look like a woman while still being functionally a man. So just keep that in mind the next time you hear someone bemoan the high price of titty Skittles. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe.